Why should you watch Oldboy? The original Korean one, not the American remake. That one's not that good. Well, let me tell you. The protagonist of the movie is a man named Odesu. The movie starts off with him in a jail, and his friend comes to pick him up. On their way home, the friend calls Odesu's wife to let her know that they're heading home. But when he turns back around, Odesu is gone in the crowd. The film then cuts, and you see Odesu at the bottom of a door, begging a man to tell him where he is or why he's there. But the man tells him nothing, and simply gives him some food. You now see Odesu is locked inside what appears to be a hotel room. You don't know why he's here, and over the course of the next few minutes, you see Odesu's life now. He sits around, watches TV, begins to practice fighting, and eventually begins to conspire his escape. Odesu also explains that every so often, gas begins to pour into his room, and when he awakes, his hair is cut and his facial hair is shaved off. One day, he's given an opportunity. This happens when the people that are guarding him bring him some food, and with his food come the usual chopsticks. However, this time, instead of the usual 2, it's 3 metal chopsticks. So, when they take his food back, he only returns 2, hiding one under his pillow. Over the course of the next few months, years in fact, he starts chipping away at the wall behind his bed, day after day, thinking about how it will be when he escapes and he's finally free. One day he finally breaks away the last brick and is able to put his hand outside for the first time in 15 years. He feels rain fall on his fingers, and he feels he's so close. He can hear the cars rumbling outside, the sounds of people, lights, the city. He's so close. And at this point, the gas begins to re-enter his room. Quickly, he hides his bed and lays back in it, thinking to himself that this will be the last night he ever stays here, because tomorrow is the day that he will escape. And with that, he sleeps happily. Again, now the movie cuts, and now you see what seems to be a suitcase in a field of grass. All of a sudden, the suitcase opens, and out pops Odesu, and he sees that it's not in a field after all. In fact, it's on a building. Odesu looks around and he sees a man standing on the edge of the building. The man is about to jump off and kill himself. But before he can do so, Odesu runs up, catches him by the tie, and tells him, "Let me tell you my story." And all this happens in the first 20 minutes of the movie. Now if you're excited to watch the movie from just this, I highly recommend that you pause this video and go watch it right now. It's a great movie. If you don't care, however, I'm going to spend the next few minutes talking about what I personally like about the movie and what I think really stands out about it. Of course, from now on I'm going to be going into some spoilers, so you've been warned. First off, I think this movie does a really good job about handling violence and gore. A lot of the time in this movie, there are some pretty bad things that happen. For instance, Odesu is tearing the teeth out of a man's mouth with a hammer. You see Odesu place the hammer in the man's mouth. At this point, you see a close-up of the teeth. You see the end of the hammer place itself right around it, and you see it slowly turn, and with it, some blood starts to come out of the man's mouth. And right before it gets too far, the camera cuts, and you see Odesu as he quickly yanks his arm, and with this, you feel the pain. What this movie does is that it cuts away right before the good part, right before the big build-up, right before the climax, and instead, it shows the violence right off screen, close enough where you see it's happening and you know it's happening, but not enough where that you actually see the gore itself. This is a lot more impactful to me, because instead of showing you, the movie is forcing you to think about it. It's forcing you to feel what's going on in the scene, what's happening to the man. Instead of just seeing some teeth fly out with bad practical effects or bad CGI, your mind is left imagining the pain itself. And with that, you feel it in your mouth. You cringe and you move back, because you see what the man's going through. Not with your eyes, but with your mind. And that's so much more impactful to me. This happens again later, at the end of the movie, once Odesu finds out the big reveal, the big secret about what truly happened and why he was in prison for so long. At this point, Odesu puts a pair of scissors to his tongue, offering to never speak lies again to the main villain. And once Odesu holds the scissors up to his tongue, the camera zooms in on his eyes, and then the camera pans, slowly showing his hands, never actually showing his mouth. And as you see his fingers tightly around the scissors, you see them slowly begin to squeeze tighter and tighter and tighter until finally the tension snaps. And then you hear his scream. And again you feel the pain. You feel your tongue being ripped out of your own mouth. You hear his blood-curdling scream and you think you're there. You think it happened to you. And it's so much more powerful to me. Another thing this movie does well is actually realism. As odd as it sounds about a man being imprisoned for 15 years, this movie is pretty realistic. The first time you see this kind of realism is in one of the most famous scenes from this movie. You might have actually seen it before. It's a fight scene that all takes place in one shot. You see Odesu fighting in a hallway against a group of men, fighting with nothing more than a hammer and the skills he's learned and practiced while he was in prison. Now usually it'd be very hard for one man to take down so many, but there's actually some reasoning to it. The thing is that Odesu's been practicing for years, a decade even, waiting for this moment to get his revenge. While these men, they're all just bodyguards. They're paid men that have never actually had to fight in their lives. It's never seemed that anyone's ever escaped from this prison, so why would they ever have to fight? You can actually see it with one of the men in particular. If you look really closely, there's this one guy in the scene pretty early in the fight, and he never even hits Odesu. He doesn't even get hit himself, and yet he falls over and stumbles backwards scared. He doesn't want to fight at all. To him, this job is just that, a job. He's just getting paid. The same can be said for all of these men. They're not professional fighters, they're not the best of the best. They're just guys doing a 9 to 5. So when Odesu actually challenges them and makes them put their work to the test, it's clear to see this guy isn't getting what he's paying for. Another instance of realism in this movie happens at the end. Once Odesu finally confronts Evergreen and he sees him, he doesn't initially know who he is. And it's pretty funny if you think about it, since Evergreen has been thinking about Odesu for the past 20-something years. It's insane actually. Evergreen has been thinking about this day ever since they were children, and yet Odesu doesn't even know who Evergreen is. Some people might be upset by the fact that Evergreen isn't someone that you've previously met in the movie. They might be upset that they couldn't figure out who the big villain was before the final confrontation. But it's important that you can't just figure it out immediately. It's important because when you see Evergreen and you meet him, you just think, who is this guy? I have no idea who he is. And that's exactly how Odesu feels. He doesn't remember who Evergreen is. He has no idea what he did to them. Why this man would want vengeance after all these years. And that's what connects the viewer so much with Odesu. In that moment, you two are one, because you both don't know what's going on. And in that way, it's realistic. It's not like two arch rivals fighting it out over the course of eternity. It's just about a man who harbored his anger and vengeance for so long that when he finally confronted the man he wanted to, the guy didn't even remember who he was. And that happens in real life. People forget people all the time. Something significant to you might be so insignificant to the other person that they forget you entirely. As for the end of the movie, I feel like it does a really good job. It leaves it open to interpretation. This is because at the end of the movie, Odesu seeks out the hypnotist that hypnotized him and Maido. He asks the hypnotist to help him forget, so that he can be happy, and so that no one can ever tell Maido the dark secret. Afterwards, Maido finds Odesu, knocked out in the middle of the snow. And when she wakes him, he stands up and he hugs her. She tells him how much she loves him, and how happy she is to see him alive. And with this, you see Odesu smile. But it's left to you to figure out what that means. Did he truly forget what happened, and who Maido is to him? Does he remember, and he's just happy that no one will ever be able to tell Maido the dark secret? Or is he finally beginning to understand what Evergreen meant when he said that he could love somebody despite everything, despite what others thought? Does he finally see the kind of love that Evergreen felt for his sister? In the end, it's up for you to decide. And those are all the reasons that you should definitely watch Oldboy. Thank you for watching, and please let me know what you think. If you've seen the movie before, or if you haven't seen it yet and this inspired you to watch it, I'm really excited to hear what you have to say. Thank you, and enjoy your movie.